Welcome back to Rural Roundup. This show is produced in association with the Scottish Government. On today's episode, we'll be joined by Siobhan Macdonald, and we'll also be looking at conferences, discussing recent changes to inheritance tax, NVZs, and also looking at some of the upcoming deadlines. So, Mary Jane, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well, George.
We've had a very, very snowy start to the new year. I don't think you were quite the same.
No, I think we got off very lightly in the Lothians, hardly a skiff of snow. The office is very near the Pentlands, which is our main hills in the Lothians region, and even the Pentlands didn't have any snow on them. So yeah, it was very cold, lots of hard frost, the odd skiff of snow, but other than that, nothing compared to what you had up north, I gather.
No, it was, very different. Most snow we've had in a number of years. We'd had at least a foot of snow lying. It did cause, the schools were off pretty much all last week. So the kids got an extended holiday, plus they got to play in the snow, so they were delighted. As per usual, there was the usual wee bits of chaos about supply issues. So we saw bread bread being short in shops, milk being short in shops, and bizarrely toilet roll was also getting short as well, which I'm not quite sure how that falls in, but never mind.
I think people panic buy, don't they? And that's one thing you don't want to be short of, I suppose.
Absolutely. It hung about a while. It started to go in, and we got another 3-4 inch, and a week and a half. It's by that time it's outstayed its welcome. That's fair to say.
Yeah, I'm sure for the kids, even the novelty was wearing off a little bit by then as well.
Yeah. I think the one thing that became quite clear quite early on. Obviously, there's farmers who are involved with contracts and things like that to clear roads, but it was really good to see the farming industry piling in and helping out, clear roads, clear car parks, making things, making life a bit more accessible and better. Basically, folk were generally able to go about. You saw social media, it gets lambasted from time to time, but the amount of members of the general public who were really appreciative of the farming community for sticking in, doing the hours, clearing roads, paths, checking in people, it really put the farming community in a good light, and it was great to see public being so appreciative.
And let's not forget that they would probably have a longer day on the farm at home as well, defrosting pipes, checking on livestock, on top of trying to keep areas clear for members of the public. So it's a hard time for farmers. Do you think there's been much impact on livestock? Was it many folk with sheep outside that were having to be brought in and that sort of thing?
I think people have managed. We're far enough out for most people's lambing. Our folk always having to trail stuff out the fields and that to keep them going, and the depth of snow didn't help. It was blowing in places, but as I said again, folk were getting on with their days. They were making the best of it. What needed to be done, they were getting that done, and then a lot of them out of their own pockets, going out and clearing roads and things like that, and that's great to see folk rallying around.
Absolutely, proper community spirit at times like that.
And, absolutely,
mucking in for the good of everyone. And do you think now that we're recording this mid January, there's been a big sort of thaw the last couple of days? Is that going to have impacts on flooding in your area? Do you think, George?
It did at the weekend. It was Sunday. There was a 24-hour spell. I don't think I've ever seen snow shift so quickly. That it was causing issues in a lot of roads. A lot of roads are subject to flooding. A lot of water had to disappear very quickly. Water just running off of fields, and everything was drains were struggling to keep up.
Yeah, and I guess the water table would be so high and then potentially still frozen underground that, whilst it's thawing on the top, it's still frozen underneath and nowhere to go to be absorbed away.
Everything. It was amazing yesterday that, the rain went off. It wasn't helped at the weekend. We did have a fair bit of rain on top of the melting snow. But it was amazing yesterday morning. It was a beautiful morning and driving up, and, it just had been that while that the rain had gone off, the snow had melted, and everything had kind of cleared itself a bit better. And it was great driving about, and everything was green again. Still a bit of snow lying about, but everything gets back to normal.
Yeah, and who knows if we've got more to come, but with things greening up a bit, George, I guess we're starting to think about fertiliser applications and NVZ rules.
Yeah, that's right. It's as I'm sitting here today, it's little more than a month, and the spurkers will be getting dusted off, and folk will be chomping at the bit to get going with the start of the spring work. The NVZ dates, they are up in Aberdeenshire here. It is Aberdeenshire, Moray, and Banff and Buchan. We are looking at the 20th of February before we can start. Or certainly after the 20th of February, and the rest of Scotland, which is in an NVZ, it's the 15th of February is the exclusion period. So folk need to be patient. We see it every year that once those dates appear, folk are just desperate to get going. Be mindful that fertiliser, it's not cheap. Be mindful that the crops this year are prices being spoken about are not that great. So you want to make the best use of those inputs. You want to get the most bang for your buck. Make sure the crop's growing. Don't just leather it on, your nitrogen on, just to get it done early on. You get frost, you get rain. A percentage of that is going to go, more of that is going to go into, it's not going to go at the crop. Put it like that. It's go to places it shouldn't be going. You don't want to be polluting. You don't want to be losing that nitrogen. You want to get as much of that go into the crop as you possibly can. And once the crop starts growing, that's the time to really, really start targeting it. It's looking for something then, and it'll make the best utilisation of it.
And I suppose we're talking about nitrogen only when we're talking about NVZ rules and regulations and closed periods, but it's just as relevant to P and K as well. And now that a lot of farm businesses are having to do soil sampling as part of the whole farm plan process for your basic payment, it's probably a good time for people that have had soil analysis done, maybe in the back end there for the deadline for PSF and things, to really have a look at those soil results and think about doing some nutrient budgeting and fertilizer planning, either with their agronomist or their advisor, or there's some free tools out there to help as well, some resources on the FAS website, I'm sure, that could help you out, because as you say, George, it's just such a small margin that any savings you can make help the environment, but ultimately help your budget as well.
I've been doing that for a few growers this winter. Just look at, they have analysed their soils. We have pumped the numbers, so to speak, and in some cases it means changing from maybe a standard 16s, maybe changing the grade just to make it more targeted. They might need more potash, they might need more phosphate. It really depends on the farm, depends on the soil. They might even change the regime, basically. It might help them save a bit more money. And I think this is a year that every penny will count.
We've been doing nutrient budgeting at home for 10 plus years every year, and it's kind of what you were saying there. It's sometimes tricky to find the right fertilizer for what the soil analysis tells you that you need, but there's always a range of blends or straights that you can use, and we always try and narrow it down to 2 to 3 different types of fertilizer, and that's all we buy, and we find what best meets the needs of our soils and our crops, and cut back where we can, and use organic manures, of course, as well. That's the other way to really value your organic manures and consider getting them analysed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's real ways to save money there, and certainly, I've seen people move to maybe a DAP down a spout for spring barleys, and they will top up the potash accordingly using a straight, as opposed to going over just with a triple 16 or a 10, 20, 30 and not necessarily be paying too much attention to what the soil levels are. So it does pay to just take that wee bit of time and put on the nutrients you need. It's a double-edged thing. If you're light as well in nutrients, you're better topping them up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to get to the point where you're depleted. So it is tricky, and as you say, varies hugely farm to farm, and even we find from field to field, the fields closer to the farm traditionally would have got more of the organic manure, so it's a bit more of a conscious effort to move it further away from the steading or whatever. So there's many reasons why some fields might be lighter than the others or need a greater application. And I suppose with the NVZ as well, to bear in mind the organic manure closed periods as well. So for high available nitrogen manures like slurries and things, the closed period for sandy or shallow soils on grassland and other land is the 31st of December. So in theory, you can go on and apply the high nitrogen slurries and manures now. All other soils, it's the 31st of January. But I think I would just...
there is some restrictions there, the volumes you can stick on as well, but... have a look at the guidance for that, just to confirm what it is for your area, and it depends on the type of manure you're applying as well.
And I was just going to add as well the ground conditions. So whilst it might be technically that you're allowed, or even if it's with the quantitative restrictions, which I think are up to the 14th of February, that still, if it's waterlogged and icy as it has been, perhaps not the best time to be applying it, because your crop certainly won't be able to take it up.
I know the temptation is there when it is icy, because it will take a tractor, but don't do it. Just don't do it.
It's quite clear in the guidance not to, isn't it?
Yeah. And it comes down to this as well, that if you've been doing your soil analysis, if a ground, we'll say there's a chance to save money, but if a soil needs it, you're always better to apply it as well. Apply what it needs. I mean, I have a client who always says to me, never let your soil ken you're hard up. So basically, if it needs something, put it on, whether that's lime, whether it's PK, if it needs it, you need to apply it.
Yeah, otherwise you're just pushing the problem further down the road, aren't you? So that's sound advice. We've got some deadlines coming up as well, George, haven't we?
We certainly do. We've got the PSF, which is it just seems to have been part of our lexicon for the last 3 years, 4 years, however long it has been. And the 28th of February, that's the deadline for making those claims. Final claims, I think we have to say, because I think that's PSF finished with now. 2025 was the last year.
Yeah.
But 28th of February, that's a crucial date for getting those claims in.
So that's anyone that's done soil analysis and carbon audits and any of the animal health and welfare interventions up until the end of December last year can still claim till February. So it's not for any action taken in January, February this year.
Yeah, so the important thing to remember is that carbon audits and soils, they need a copy of your bank statement for proof of payment, along with the results and invoices, but they need a copy of that bank statement, and make sure you've got your ducks in a row, basically. Make sure payments are made in time, or you're able to download the relevant evidence that's required. It can be a challenge at times. Folk leave it to the last minute to pay the bill, leave it to pay at the end of the month, and it doesn't go through in January, ends up in February, and you're chasing your tail to get that statement.
Yeah, I think for anyone with digital banking, it's relatively easy to print off a current statement on the day that you need it. But for anyone that doesn't have digital banking, you're relying on the post or having to go to a bank, which are harder and harder to find in person now. We've had clients driving around, the Borders and Lothians trying to find an open branch to get a statement printed off because they don't have digital banking. So just bear that in mind if you don't have digital banking, to, as you say, George, give yourself plenty of time. If you've paid for it now, just do your claim now. And the other thing to say about it is all the guidance is on the Rural Payments website, so have a read of that before you get to start the claim. And you log in on the Rural Payments website, but it's not the same login that you would log in to do your IACS form or look at your mapping. So navigate to the Preparing for Sustainable Farming Grant section, and then you'll see there's a button that says Start Your Claim. So that can be quite tricky to find if you're not aware of where it is. So that's where to find that to start that claim.
Yeah. The other claim deadline, I suppose we'd have to mention, is AECS. AECS has been another scheme that's been going for, it's been going for about 10 years. Obviously, management options and capital options are undertaken during that capital year. However, the deadline, again, for making those capital claims is the 28th of February. So again, be aware of what you need to be claiming clearly, and get them in. If you miss it, it could be costing you quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
Certainly when you're speaking about green manures and things like that, or even, capital such as fencing and things like that. You need to get those claims in. And big news before Christmas about inheritance tax.
Yeah, we had our colleague Andrew Coulter from the Perth office, who has a strong background in accountancy, on to tell us all about the changes to inheritance tax. And I think we all believed at the time that there wasn't going to be any movement on that. But some good news for farmers and landowners on the 23rd of December. The UK government announced changes to the inheritance tax thresholds up to 2.5 million per spouse. So potentially for married families, married couples, that they've potentially then got 5 million, which is a big uplift from what we were working with before.
I know it was really welcomed by the farming community. There's no doubt about it, and it was Christmas present.
Yeah,
you could say.
I don't think we were expecting it. So no. Lovely bit of news, and potentially passed under people's radar with it being announced so close to Christmas. So worth having a chat with your family members and then your accountants and advisors, solicitors and whatnot, to make sure that any plans that you have already put in place or thinking about putting in place, that you're maximising those allowances and just really planning for the future. I think it's still an opportunity to succession plan, and it's not an excuse to leave it even longer. I would still encourage everyone to go and have that conversation with their families, and then whatever relevant specialists they need to bring in to make sure that everything's in place, because you just never know what's going to happen. And best to be prepared.
The last 18 months or so, it's been a wake-up call for folk to actually start making plans. It's one of those things that just gets pushed to the back burner. Nobody likes talking about it. Succession, it passing on to the next generation. Worst case, folk are thinking, well, mum and dad are not going to be there, so they don't want to talk about it. And you totally understand it. And when there can be several siblings, it can get complicated. And there's awkward conversations, but they're better faced up as soon as possible and get things sorted out so that folk can be as happy as they can be, really.
Yeah, I think we've all got examples where the conversations haven't happened before somebody's passed away, and then it's even worse afterwards when you're trying to deal with logistics and grief as well as everything else. So it might be awkward now, but harder often to do it after the event. So welcome news, and I think something nice to start the new year off with.
I think so. There was this big concern at the smaller family farms. It was really going to hit them, but because they've just moved up that threshold, it's going to lift some of them out of it, and the effect's not going to be so big. Clearly there's going to be farms that are still going to be affected, but even for them, again, the tax liability is not going to be so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mary Jane, you've been busy of late organising your Women in Ag conference.
Yeah, that's right. As part of my role with the Farm Advisory Service, I oversee a lot of the Women in Agriculture delivery. So I run my own local group, and there's local groups across Scotland for anyone that wants to look that up on the FAS website. But we're also hosting our second national conference, and that's to bring everyone together that can make it. So it's on the 11th of February at Murrayfield Stadium.
Okay, and who have you got speaking at this year's one?
The theme this year is land, legacy, and leadership. So I've got a range of speakers that sort of tick off those three topics. So for leadership, I've got Kate Rowell, who many people will be familiar with. She's chair of QMS. She's talking about her roles in various societies and things over the years. She's also a farmer and a qualified vet as well. So she's got really interesting story to tell. And we've also got Gillian Kennedy from SAYFC talking about her role. She's national chairman of the Young Farmers at the moment. It's just nice to have two women from different ends of their career in leadership roles. So really looking forward to hearing both of them speak. For the land aspect, my colleague David Brown from the St Boswell's office is going to come up and talk in one of the breakout sessions about biodiversity, particularly about the greening rules that have just come out that we've talked about in previous episodes, but how you can use them to benefit your farm and your land management. You know, how can you really use these new EFA options to boost biodiversity on your farm? And then I've got Emily Grant, who's an independent agriculture consultant, but she's also a farmer and really into sort of pasture for life type work, coming to talk about how she manages livestock for rotational grazing and you know, a bit of regen agriculture coming in there too. And then finally for legacy, I've got Jen Stewart from Johnson Carmichael. She spoke at the last Women in Agriculture conference. Again, it was on succession at the time, and we're covering that again because that is an important part of the sort of legacy pieces. What are you handing on to your children and, you know, people that are likely to inherit from you, and how can you manage that now for their futures? As well as having Gareth Allen from Assets, another accountancy firm, and he sort of deals with wealth and asset management. And again, just thinking about that sort of piece for succession. And we're actually kicking off the conference with a lady called Katie Brisbane, who works for RET as a sort of organises farm tours and classroom speakers and things. But she also sadly lost her husband to a farm accident. I think it was about 18 months ago. And so she's very bravely going to come and talk to the whole conference about her experiences and how it was made slightly easier by the fact that her and her husband had so many plans in place. And, you know, I think whilst it's going to be tough for her to speak and you know, hard for us to listen to, it's a very real threat to a lot of farming families. You know, farming is a dangerous occupation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's important to, when we're talking about succession, to bear in mind that things can happen not just to the older generation who pass away of old age, but, you know, tragically to you know, family members. And I think it's important that the Farm Advisory Service, that we keep talking about it. And so I'm delighted that Katie's agreed to come and speak as well.
Yeah, it sounds like there is a real range of topics there, and you've got a touch of the technical side, which you always need, and that's important in a farm advisory service event. But by the sounds of it as well, you've got people coming along who will probably look to inspire.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I often get questioned why we need women in agriculture events at all. And I would point them back to some of the studies the Scottish Government did about how some women don't feel comfortable coming along to other events, you know, where they might be the only female in the room or whatever. So I feel that this is a safe space for them. But it's also, as you say, it's important to inspire women to see what roles that they already have in agriculture and maybe feel that they've not put themselves out there. So the leadership thing for me is important. You know, I'm not talking about leading QMS. That is a big job, and there's only so many people will achieve that in their lives. But it's also about leading your own farm business and leading things in your local community that might bring other aspects to your business. You know, I know Kate, for example, she's one of the guide leaders in the Peebles area, and it's just about thinking about what can you do to add to your own life and to your communities, and yeah, inspiring people to go and try something new and put themselves out there, because I think as women we're quite bad for not valuing our own skills and putting ourselves forward for things. And I think that's an important message from the conference too, is just having the confidence to take action and do things out their comfort zone.
Yeah. So as we said, there seems to be a lot of different topics there, and a lot of messages that you can take away. Where can people find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully something for everyone, and a good range of speakers. So all the information is on the Farm Advisory Service website. If you navigate to the events page, you'll find the Women in Agriculture conference on there. And my advice would be to book on soon, because we're just about sold out already. We've got 200 spaces, so there's room for more as we speak, but it does tend to sell out before the event. And it's always useful for us to know in advance how many people can make it along. Yeah, free and open to all. And I'd be delighted to welcome anyone who's never been to a FAS event before or one of the Women in Ag events. Everyone is welcome.
Yeah, great stuff. Okay, Mary Jane, your conference is always happening down in Edinburgh. Up north, we have the Farm Advisory Service Conference. And one of the organisers, Siobhan Macdonald, is joining us to tell us all about it. So firstly, Siobhan, do you want to tell us when and where it is?
Hi, George. The FAS Conference this year is at the Dromossie Hotel, which is just on the outskirts of Inverness, and it's on the 19th of February. So we're really excited to have a conference that's in the north this year, and we've got a great lineup of speakers and demonstrations.
Great. What's this year's themes?
This year, our themes are technology and succession. So the title of the conference is Cultivating Change.
Okay. And who are you targeting this year? Who are you aiming this conference at?
All farmers, crofters and land managers from the north of Scotland, from the Highlands and Islands. So everybody's welcome, but those are our main target audience.
So it's fair to say that this year's will be slightly different because you've very much got a different audience in the north and west there.
Yes, there are more livestock farms up here than arable, but we do have arable sections in this conference as well. So for some of the more East Coast farmers, there'll definitely be items of interest and relevance.
Okay, and technology is something that can be a wee bit scary, a wee bit expensive, and that can put folk off. How are you making this relatable and accessible to farmers?
We've got some industry experts coming along to explain new tech, but we will also have farmers who are going to give their practical experiences of using tech on the ground. So Nicola Wordy, for example, who uses EID information and uses automatic machines. But we'll also have people who are using virtual collars and who try doing things like pen-side testing. So we'll have lots of farmer and crofter experiences of items used and just to see how useful they actually are in practice.
So it's a great opportunity there for farmers to hear firsthand from folk who are using it, as opposed to maybe folk who are trying to sell it or experts like ourselves, so to speak. They can really hear firsthand.
On the succession side, we'll have lots of different organisations there that can help new entrants into agriculture. So we're ambitiously going to have a set out of a wheel, and people can choose which things to go to. So they can go and see ARPID, or they can go and find out about apprenticeships. They can meet up with the Scottish Land Matching Service. They can talk to SRUC about apprenticeships. And they can meet Patrick Lawrie, who's a real advocate for biodiversity changes. And we'll also hear from Robert Young, who is going to talk about inheritance tax and succession planning. So lots in there for new entrants as well.
New entrants is actually quite a broad category. I think that's one thing I've learned. And there can be people who class themselves a new entrant, and they're new entrant because they're young, basically. They've been farming for 10, 15 years, but still class themselves as a relative new entrant. But you're also catering for those who are the real new entrants, the ones who are really just kicking off their farming journey.
Absolutely, yes. So people who just don't know quite where to turn at the start, how do you get registered? How do you find out about where to go and who to speak to? So this is a great opportunity to get advice on what to do first, but also speak to those organisations. So it maybe makes it a little less scary as well to get in touch. Once you've seen somebody's face, it's much easier to then progress.
And Siobhan, we're going through one of those periods where there's bits and bobs of policy change. There's obviously greening changes, perhaps doesn't really affect those in the north and the west. It will affect some, obviously. There is whole farm plan coming in. There is we're on a route map. You're catering for that as well.
Yeah, good point. The agricultural reform staff will be there to help anybody who has questions as well. They'll have a stand. But also we're going to have a final section with Stephen Thompson to talk about policy in the future and how it's likely to impact farms in the north of Scotland.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks, Siobhan, for coming along, and I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic day and a fantastic opportunity there for folk to come along and learn something and take away some great messages.
Thank you very much for asking me along, and if anyone wants to book on the conference, then you'll find the event on the FAS website, and hope to see you there.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Rural Roundup. We'll see you back here on the 18th of February with our next episode. This episode was hosted by George Chalmers and Mary Jane Lawrie, featuring our guest Siobhan Macdonald, and was produced by George Gawley and edited by Cameron Wall.
The Farm Advisory Service Podcast. Audio advice on livestock, crops and soils, environment, rural business and more. Brought to you in association with the Scottish Government.